They were small, brittle-boned creatures, their skin translucent and soft, their eyes large and glimmering like liquid crystal. Once, their worlds thrived lush planets with gentle climates, rich in forests and rivers, but poor in metals and fuel. They traded culture and artistry, not weapons. For centuries, they believed their songs and sculptures would buy them a place in the wider galaxy. But when the Kale Dominion began its march of conquest, the Aishrine's illusions shattered. The Kale were not interested in art or beauty. They were conquerors, and to them, the Iashrine were neither a threat nor a resource worth sparing. Their fleets swept across the Iashrine colonies like fire across dry grass, burning away what fragile defenses existed. Cities collapsed into ash. Orbital habitats were stripped bare, and the survivors scattered into overcrowded stations on the fringes of nowhere. Desperation drove the Aishrin to the Federation. Their emissaries begged for protection. "We are defenseless," they cried. "We are citizens of this galaxy as much as you are. Do not let us perish." But the Federation heard and turned away. In the grand chambers of the Galactic Council, senators and delegates argued not of morality, but of logistics. What did the Aishrin offer in return? Their planets had little strategic value. They had no fleets, no soldiers, no technology that might tip the balance of future wars. To defend them would mean provoking the Kale Dominion into further aggression, perhaps even total war. One by one, hands were withdrawn. Neighboring systems that had once welcomed Atrian traders shut their ports. Allies who had sung with them in festivals locked their borders. Even their closest partners spoke in cold logic. "We cannot afford to share your fate. Forgive us." The Aishrin were left adrift, watching their stars go dark as Dominion banners were planted where their gardens once bloomed. On one refugee station, orbiting a dying moon, despair had settled like a heavy fog. The corridors reeked of too many bodies pressed together of recycled air and failing filters, while children with hollow cheeks clung to parents who no longer sang to them. The elders sat in silence, staring at walls as if they were tombstones. There was no future left, only waiting for the inevitable, when the Dominion would tire of ignoring them and sweep in to finish what they had begun. It was in this shadow of extinction that something unexpected happened. A ship arrived, not a Federation. Relief vessel there had been none of those. Not a Kale raider either. Though the alarms wailed the moment the vessel emerged from FTL, the refugees crowded the viewports, expecting the end. The ship that drifted into orbit was battered, scarred by battles long past, its armor patched and scorched. A relic of old wars, still alive by stubbornness alone. The broadcast came not in the polished cadence of diplomats, but in a voice roughened by command and years of shouting over the roar of battle. "This is Commander Elias Kane, Terran Republic, Navy retired. I come with supplies, and I come with intent. You are not abandoned, not while I draw breath." The words struck the station like thunder. Many wept in disbelief. Some whispered that it was a trick, that no one, least of all a human, would risk themselves for a people the galaxy had already discarded. Yet hours later, cargo bays opened, and crates of food, water filters, and medical packs spilled out into the station's docking bay. When Kane himself descended the ramp, towering above the Aishrin like a steel giant, the crowd parted in fearful. His scars marked him as a man who had lived through wars they could scarcely imagine. His eyes, however, held no contempt, only a steady, unwavering fire. The queen matriarch of the Aishrin, her fragile frame trembling as attendants guided her forward, lifted her voice. "Why? Why help us when all others turn their backs?" Kane looked down at her, and his reply was as simple as it was unshakable. The Aishrin had learned to expect disappointment. Every time a new ship appeared on their scanners, hope flickered, only to be smothered. Raiders stripped what little they had. Smugglers sold them rotten food at obscene prices. The Federation's own patrols sometimes passed through, recording their suffering in meticulous reports, before leaving without lifting a finger. So when Kane's cargo spilled into the docking bay, skepticism ran deep. Refugees swarmed the supplies. some too hungry to wait for rationing, others too fearful that it might vanish if they hesitated. The first taste of real food in months brought tears down withered cheeks. Children clutched at clean water as though it were treasure beyond price, but suspicion lingered. What did this towering human want from them? Cain did not demand worship, payment, or service. He worked beside them. The Assyrian watched with wide eyes as he carried crates alone that would have taken 6 of them to lift. He repaired broken generators with crude but effective techniques, coaxing life into systems long abandoned. His presence in the corridors was both terrifying and strangely comforting, like a wall of iron standing between them and the void. At last, the queen matriarch summoned him to her chamber. She was frail, her skin pale as parchment, her body trembling from age and hunger. Surrounded by her closest attendants, she fixed Cain with a gaze heavy with both suspicion and fragile hope. "Why?" she asked, voice cracking. "What? Why would a human travel across sectors to us? We have nothing left. No fleets, no riches, not even a world to call our own. Why risk yourself when the galaxy is already turned away?" Cain stood silently for a moment, his scarred hands clasped behind his back. Then he knelt, lowering himself, until his eyes were level with hers. The gesture shocked her attendants. No outsider had ever bowed so low to a Hystran sovereign. "I didn't come for what you can give me," Cain said quietly. "I came because I heard your cries, and because someone had to answer. To walk away, to do nothing, would make us less than human. My people know what it means to be abandoned. We don't forget." The chamber fell into silence. Many of the attendants wept. The queen matriarch herself reached out with trembling fingers, brushing against Cain's weathered hand as though to assure herself he was real. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to believe they might not be alone. From that day, Cain became more than just a benefactor. He became a shield. He inspected the station with a soldier's eye, noting every weakness, every neglected system, every corridor that could become a choke point in battle. The Assyrian had long accepted their helplessness. They had never even considered fortifying the station. But Cain refused resignation. "Helpless," he said one night as he sketched defense plans on a cracked console screen, "isn't the same as hopeless. You're small, fragile. But that only means we fight smarter. We fight together." At first, the Assyrian balked. They were not warriors. They were artists, farmers, healers. Their hands shook at the thought of weapons. Cain did not ask them to become killers overnight. He taught them the basics: how to seal bulkheads against depressurization, how to handle a shock baton, how to follow orders under fire. Children, who once trembled at shadows, now stood in makeshift drills, wooden rods in their hands, learning to shout commands in unison. Adults, hesitant at first, began to repair neglected turrets, to weld scrap into armor plating, to take pride in the creak and hum of the station as it grew stronger under their care. Cain's ship, Resolute, remained docked at the station. Though old and scarred, it was a fortress compared to the refugee hulk. Cain shared its stores freely, stripping away weapons, drones, and shielding to strengthen the Assyrian. He slept little, moving constantly between ship and station, a tireless sentinel. Whispers began to spread through the galaxy. Traders spoke of a human warship seen in a forgotten system, guarding a helpless race the Dominion had marked for extinction. Some dismissed it as rumor, others as madness. What could one ship do against the Dominion's fleets? Surely it was a suicide mission. But for the Assyrian, it was salvation. For the first time since their worlds had fallen, laughter returned to their halls. The sound was fragile, uncertain, but real. Families began to sing again, their voices carrying hope. Instead of despair, they had no illusions that Cain alone could defeat the Dominion, but his presence proved they were not forgotten. That hope would soon be tested. The Dominion, never forgiving humiliation or defiance, had detected Cain's presence. When their raiding party arrived, expecting another easy slaughter, they instead found a station with reinforced hulls, active turrets, one human commander standing defiant on the battlements. The era of helplessness was over. The Dominion had grown arrogant through unbroken conquest. They swept across weak systems like a tide, so confident in their superiority that their fleets often deployed with minimal forces. To crush the Ashreen survivors, they sent 3 frigates hardly more than patrol craft compared to their dreadnoughts. For the Kale, it was not war. It was extermination. The Ashreen refugees knew this pattern too well. When the first warning klaxons blared across the station, panic rippled through the population. Mothers clutched children, elders collapsed in despair. Old habits of helplessness surged back. But then Kane's voice boomed across the comms. Calm, steady, ironclad. Stations hold firm. This is not the end. This is the day you learn. You are stronger than they believe. He had spent weeks preparing them. Every Ashreen had a role manning turrets, monitoring sensors, repairing shield lines, or guiding civilians to safety. Their hands still trembled, but now those hands moved with purpose. The station was no longer just a hollow shell of despair. Under Kane's guidance, it was a fortress waiting to prove itself. The Dominion frigates dropped from FTL in a blaze of energy. Their commanders, confident in victory, did not even activate full battle formations. They broadcast their intentions with casual cruelty. Vermin, your suffering ends today. Prepare to be extinguished. Kane, seated in the command chair of the Resolute, smirked. Funny, that's what I was about to say to you. The battle began with fire in the void. The first frigate charged recklessly, guns flaring. It never reached the station. Hidden mines, old proximity explosives Kane had salvaged from forgotten caches, ignited beneath its hull. The frigate split, apart in a blossom of molten metal, scattering wreckage into the void. For the first time, the Ashreen, watching from viewports, saw their hunters destroyed before their eyes. Their fear turned into stunned gasps. The second frigate veered wide, attempting to flank. Kane had anticipated the move. Sector 5. Open fire, he ordered, and the station's retrofitted turrets unleashed a storm of plasma. Guided by the trembling hands of Ashreen gunners, the bolts tore into the frigate's shields. The Resolute surged forward, its cannons roaring, ripping chunks from the Dominion vessel until it exploded in a shuddering cascade of debris. The third frigate, seeing its comrades annihilated, faltered. For the first time in generations, Kale warriors knew hesitation. They turned to retreat. Kane's eyes narrowed. Not today. With practiced precision, he pursued. The Resolute moved like a predator, despite its age, engines screaming as it closed the gap. A volley of torpedoes streaked through the void, slamming into the fleeing frigate's stern. Fire blossomed, consuming the vessel as Kane watched in grim satisfaction. When silence returned to space, only wreckage remained of the enemy. Inside the station, the Acreon erupted, not in panic, but in cheers. Their songs, once only dirges, rose in triumphant chorus. For the first time in memory, they had not been victims. They had resisted and they had survived. But Kane knew victory came with a price. On the Resolute, warning lights blazed red. Shields had held, but barely. Ammunition was running thin. His ship was strong, but it was one ship. The Dominion would not ignore this insult. They would return with more, far more. He gathered the Ashreen leaders in the station's council chamber. Their eyes, once dulled by despair, now shone with fierce new light. The Queen Matriarch trembled, not with weakness, but with emotion as she addressed him. You gave us something we thought lost forever, she whispered. Dignity, hope, a reason to fight. Kane met her gaze. Hope isn't enough. They'll be back, and in greater numbers. We'll need more defenses, more training. And when they come, you'll stand not behind me, but beside me. A murmur rippled through the chamber. For a people once condemned as helpless, the thought of standing against the Dominion seemed impossible. Yet they had already done the impossible. They had faced the hunters and lived. That night the Ashreen did not mourn their dead. They sang songs of defiance, voices trembling but strong. Children asked to hear the story of the battle again and again, their eyes wide with pride instead of fear. Elders lifted their heads, no longer ashamed of survival but proud of it. And though Cain allowed himself a rare moment of rest, his mind remained sharp. He knew the Dominion's pride had been wounded, and wounded pride in empires bred only wrath. Battle of the Forgotten, as it would later be called, was not the end. It was the spark. A single human had stood for a people the galaxy had abandoned. And in doing so, he had awakened the Dominion's defeat at the hands of a single human and a broken refugee. Stations spread across the sector like wildfire. For the first time in decades, Kale commanders found themselves mocked in hushed tones. Their aura of invincibility cracked. Pride demanded retribution. The Dominion did not forgive insults. They crushed them. Cain knew it was only a matter of time before the next storm came. But instead of fear, he saw something stirring among the Icerene. Where once their eyes were downcast, now they lifted their heads. Where once their voices trembled, now they sang with strength. The transformation began in the smallest of ways. A child who once hid in corridors now carried tools, eager to help repair damaged bulkheads. Farmers, their hands made for planting, welded scrap into armor plating under Cain's instruction. Former healers learned to man turrets, their delicate touch surprisingly steady when guided by purpose. The station itself seemed to change with them. Once a decaying tomb, it now hummed with energy, lights burning brighter, systems running smoother, corridors echoing with voices that no longer whispered, but shouted. Cain drilled them relentlessly. At first, the Atrine faltered. They dropped training weapons, flinched at simulated alarms, wept when confronted with memories of battles lost. But Cain was patient. He did not berate weakness, he turned it into fuel. You are not soldiers, he told them, standing tall. In the training bay, you are survivors. That makes you harder to kill than any army. Bit by bit, they believed him. Where once they spoke of waiting for death, now they spoke of standing for life. The songs of the Acerine changed too. Their laments, mournful and broken, became battle hymns. Cain encouraged them to weave coded frequencies into their music, transforming their cultural heritage into a weapon. Soon, Dominion sensors would find themselves drowned in signals that seemed like Staticant, till it was too late, and then the storm came. The Dominion arrived in force, not 3 frigates, but an armada. Warships blotted out the stars, their engines a wall of fire. The Kale commander's voice, sharp and cruel, bellowed across every channel. You dare harbor vermin cast aside by the galaxy? You dare resist us, human? You will die with them. Screaming, on the Resolute's bridge, Cain stood motionless as the words echoed. Around him, Icerene engineers and operators trembled but did not break. They looked to him not as a savior, but as their commander. He turned, meeting their eyes. One by one, listen to me. They call you vermin. They think you're weak. But you are still here, still standing. Today, you show them what survival means. Today, you remind the galaxy that the abandoned are not forgotten. The Queen Matriarch herself, frail but unyielding, rose from her seat beside the Cums. Her voice amplified across the station, joined his. We are the Acerine. Once we sang for beauty. Today we sing for survival, and we will not be silent. Her declaration lit a fire in her people. Across the station, voices rose, singing in haunting harmony. A battle song encoded with layered signals that scrambled Dominion scanners. The Kale, expecting easy prey, found their targeting arrays jammed, their communications flooded with alien music. Then the battle began. The void erupted in fire. Plasma bolts and torpedoes streaked through the black. The Resolute roared forward like a beast from legend, its battered hull glowing with shield light. Icerene gunners, hands shaking but resolute, unleashed volleys that tore through enemy shields. Their precision, born of a people who once crafted art with delicate skill, now painted destruction across Dominion hulls. But the Dominion were many. For every frigate destroyed, more pressed forward. The station shook with impacts. its reinforced plating groaning under the onslaught. Fires tore through corridors. Civilians carried buckets, dragged wounded to makeshift infirmaries, refused to cower. Every Aishreen, whether on the front line or deep inside the station, fought in their own way. Kane was everywhere, on the coms steadying voices, in the command chair, directing volleys with surgical precision. At times even in the corridors, sidearm blazing as boarding parties breached. His presence was more than tactical, it was spiritual. To the Aishreen, he was a living reminder that they were not alone. Yet as the battle raged, Kane knew the truth. The numbers were against them. The Dominion would keep sending ships until the Resolute fell and the station broke. But he also knew this: the Aishreen were no longer helpless. They had found their courage, their strength, their voice. Even if he fell, the fire he lit in them would never be extinguished. The Dominion had come to exterminate a species. Instead, they had awakened a people who refused to die quietly. The void burned with wreckage. Dominion cruisers blazed like falling stars, scattering twisted metal across the system. The Resolute groaned as if alive, its hull torn and smoking, shields flickering to nothing. Kane stood on its bridge, gripping the rail as alarms howled around him. He had bought them hours, but hours would not be enough. The Aishreen fought with a desperation no one had thought them capable of. The station, once a place of sorrow, now thrummed with coordinated defiance. Engineers rerouted power from every non-essential system to the turrets. Medics tended wounded under fire, their songs doubling as code to jam Dominion sensors.
Ow.
Even children carried ammunition across trembling decks. They were fragile, yes, but fragility had become their armor. Each life mattered, and none would be surrendered easily. But the Dominion's armada was relentless. For every frigate and destroyer they lost, more pressed in. Soon a colossal silhouette emerged from the darkness, the Dominion flagship. Its guns were larger than entire Aishreen dwellings. Its shields gleamed with the power of 1,000 stolen worlds. The enemy commander's voice cut across the void, cold and triumphant. You cannot win. Human, you cannot protect them. Die, and let the galaxy forget these vermin once and for all. Kane's jaw tightened. His crew, human and Aishreen alike, looked to him. He saw their exhaustion, their wounds, their determination, and he knew what must be done. He leaned into the coms, voice steady as steel. Irene vessels, all defense lines, fall back behind the station. This fight isn't yours anymore. It's mine. The Queen Matriarch's reply was almost a scream. No, we will not abandon you as the galaxy abandoned us. Kane closed his eyes for a heartbeat, then spoke softly. You don't understand. This isn't me leaving you. This is me making sure you get to live. You must carry the fire forward. Promise me. The Queen's voice cracked, but she answered, We promise. Kane gave his crew their orders. Many protested. Some begged to stay at his side. The Resolute's card, battered bleeding fire into the void, would be his weapon. His sacrifice with engine screaming, Kane drove the warship forward. It tore through Dominion formations, cannons blazing in a final symphony of defiance. Frigates shattered under its fury. Destroyers buckled as torpedoes carved into their hearts. The Resolute, once outmatched, now became death incarnate. The Dominion flagship loomed larger, weapons locking on. Kane smiled grimly, blood running from a cut across his brow. For Earth, he whispered. For the Aishreen, for all the abandoned. He overrode the failsafes, armed the reactor core. The ship's AI screamed warnings, but Kane's hands were unshaking. He locked the Resolute on a collision course with the flagship. In the final moments, he opened one last channel to the station. His voice filled every corridor, every heart. Remember this. You are not weak. You are not forgotten. You're survivors, and no empire can take that from you. Live, live, and prove me right. The Resolute struck the Dominion flagship like a thunderbolt. The collision ignited a chain reaction, the reactor core exploding in a detonation brighter than a sun. The flagship was obliterated, torn apart in a blaze that consumed half the Dominion fleet. Those ships that survived broke formation, panic driving them into retreat. When the light faded, silence reigned. The Ashreen station drifted, scarred but intact, surrounded by the wreckage of an empire's pride. The Kale Dominion, once unstoppable, had fled from a single human sacrifice. The Ashreen wept. Their songs rose, not in mourning alone, but in triumph. Cain had given his life, but in doing so he had given them back theirs. In the days that followed, the galaxy took notice. News spread of the lone human who had stood where no empire dared, who had fought not for profit nor alliance, but for compassion. The Federation, shamed, sent aid at last. Supplies and fleets arrived. Too late to save Cain, but eager to wash away their guilt, the Ashreen accepted the aid, but not as beggars. They stood tall now, voices clear, their queen matriarch unbending. When asked by the Galactic Council why she thought a single human had done what the whole Federation had refused, she gave her answer: because where you saw weakness, he saw family.